Tanse, I'm Kristinachkite. Welcome to APTN National News. One person has died and another has been seriously injured following a police shooting in Salluit, a community in northern Quebec. To the Nunavik Police Service on Monday at around 4 a.m., police received a call for assistance from a resident. While on scene during the incident, an officer discharged his service weapon. 2 individuals were shot. One died from his injuries and the second person was seriously injured and received medical care on scene and was transported by medevac to hospital. The Office of Independent Investigations, or BEI, is now investigating and is asking anybody who witnessed the incident to come forward. This cell phone video, which has been viewed more than 800,000 times, alleges to show a police officer involved in the incident in Salluit. Screaming can be heard before a brief struggle and the officer fires 2 rounds. By Monday afternoon, about 50 community members organized a protest outside of the Salluit police station, calling for justice for Joshua and justice for the twins. APTN News has identified the 2 involved as twins Joshua and Garnet Papagadak. Joshua is the one who passed away. A GoFundMe page has now been set up for the family as they travel to southern Quebec to help Garnet with his recovery. We'll have more on this story tonight on our Evening News with Dennis Ward. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is organizing a vigil for a woman who died behind the Portage Place Mall in downtown Winnipeg. On October 31st at around 3 p.m., 28-year-old Brianna Close was found with life-threatening injuries by Winnipeg police on the 100 block of the promenade behind Portage Place Mall. She later died of her injuries in hospital. Close is being remembered as a loving mother of 4 children. 32-year-old Ryan John Kennedy has been charged with second-degree murder in connection with her death, and the 2 were known to each other. A candlelight vigil will be held this evening at 7 p.m. in Winnipeg at the Portage Place Promenade. The Assembly of First Nations Executive Committee has passed a resolution to support a public inquiry into the death of John Wells. Wells died on September 17th after an altercation with 3 Calgary police officers called to a city hotel. He was 42 years old and a member of the Blood Tribe in southern Alberta. The Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, or ASIRT, is investigating the incident. In a detailed September news release, ASIRT said that Wells, who was unarmed, told officers he didn't want to die before he was punched and tasered by police and injected with a sedative by EMS. In October, Blood Tribe Chief Roy Fox moved the resolution during the AFN Special Chiefs Assembly. It was officially passed on Friday. The resolution calls on the Mayor of Calgary, the Chair of the Calgary Police Commission, and the province and the feds to support the public inquiry. The Honourable Justice Murray Sinclair has passed at the age of just 73 years old. He was in a Winnipeg hospital for the past few months with his family and friends by his side. Sinclair was a prominent Anishinaabe man who has left quite the legacy. With more on his life, here's T.R. Wheatley.
Justice Murray Sinclair was most known for leading the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. 5 years he traveled the country, hearing stories of survivors of the Indian residential school system. That work led to a report with 94 calls to action.
What the government of Canada did was cultural genocide.
He was a 4th-degree chief of the Midewin Society. His spirit name, Mijinegiijik, an Anishinaabe name meaning one who speaks of pictures in the sky. A member of the Peguis First Nation, he was born on January 24, 1951. He died in hospital early Monday morning with his family by his side. Within hours, flags lowered outside the Manitoba legislature and a teepee set up for a sacred fire where Premier Wab Kinew was also helping with preparations.
I just hope that everybody takes a moment to remember this great, amazing person who's one of the true greats of our time from any walk of life, and he did something remarkable with his life. He had so many firsts that he accomplished.
Sinclair's career spanned some 45 years, first graduating from law school in 1979. 1988 was a notable year for Mijinegiijik. He became the first Aboriginal judge in Manitoba. That same year, he was named co-chair of the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry, or AJI. The AJI was called at a time when there was heightened racial tension between mainstream and Indigenous Manitobans. While the AJI looked at the entire justice system, its main focus was the 1987 trial of two men in the Paw for the brutal killing of Helen Betty Osborne in 1971 and the 1988 death of First Nations leader J.J. Harper, who was shot by a Winnipeg police officer after being racially profiled. The AJI report was released in 1991 with 296 recommendations.
The hearings themselves created a great change, a sea of change in the attitude of people towards Aboriginal justice issues.
In January 2001, Sinclair was appointed to the Court of Queen's Bench. He also started training judges on Indigenous law and social justice through the National Judicial Institute. Chief Justice of the Court of King's Bench, Glenn Joyal, worked alongside and became close with Sinclair.
When he got the call to do the TRC, he spoke to me about it. When he got the call to become a senator and finally leave the judiciary, he spoke to me about it. So I had an opportunity to see how he was answering important calls to perform a very public duty as he saw it.
Sinclair officially retired from the bench in January 2016. 3 months later, he was appointed to the Senate by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. As senator in November 2018, Sinclair penned the Thunder Bay Police Services Board investigation. It had 45 recommendations to address systemic racism in a city where Indigenous people often spoke of shoddy investigations. In June 2020, he took to social media to denounce then RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki, who didn't believe there was systemic racism within the RCMP. Get rid of the racists and you will still have a racist system, he said, referring to the fact the system, not just the people, need to change. Mijanegi retired from the Senate in January 2021. He said he wanted to spend more time writing his memoir. Just last month, his memoir, Who We Are, 4 Questions for a Life and a Nation, hit the shelves. The book started from writing letters to his granddaughter Sarah so she would know her family lineage. The memoir ended up becoming a 3-generation collaboration with Sarah and her father Nigan. Manitoba Kiwetanui Ugamaganuk Grand Chief Garrison Siti saying, like his legacy, his passing is far-reaching.
It's a great loss because we've had a statesman that represented Canada, but also a warrior that represented our causes. And he's been there for our people for so long, and it's hard to imagine a Canada without Mary Sinclair.
In November 2021, Sinclair began overseeing negotiations about compensating First Nations children and families entangled in the child welfare system following the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. In July 2022, Mijanegi spoke out about Catholic Pope Francis's apology to survivors, saying the Church continues to harm Indigenous people with the doctrine of discovery. In August 2022, Sinclair was appointed as a special advisor and elder in residence for the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation. Throughout his career, Mijanegi received dozens of accolades, including 2 Inspire Awards, one in 1994 in the Law and Justice category, and again in 2017 for Lifetime Achievement. He also has 14 honorary doctorates from universities across Canada and was Chancellor for Queen's University for 1 term. Sheila North is the Executive Director of Indigenous Engagement at the University of Winnipeg, where Sinclair was honored in 2011. She reflects on when she first heard of Sinclair during the AJI.
Impression I had of him, that he was very smart, very straightforward, and didn't mess around. And when I met him the first time, I got that same sense that he was full of integrity, that he was the way he was behind the scenes, and he was that, he held that esteem and that authority no matter who he was in front of.
In 2022, Sinclair was awarded the Adrian Clarkson Prize for Global Citizenship. In May 2022, he received an Order of Canada, and this past summer he received the Order of Manitoba. Just last month, he also received the King Charles III's Coronation Medal. Details about funeral arrangements are still not known. Sinclair's sacred fire will remain lit here at the Manitoba Legislature for the next 4 days. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
A toddler's death is now being investigated as a homicide by the Manitoba RCMP after a child's remains were found inside a barn in the province's Interlake region. The victim has been identified as Xavier Sky Lynn Butler, who would have been 1 to 2 years old at the time of her death. RCMP say no missing persons report was ever filed. Reporter Sierra Bettens spoke with one of the toddler's caregivers and brings us this update.
Xavier Skyland Butler's former caregiver, Natalie Anderson, is demanding justice after RCMP announced the toddler's death is being investigated as a homicide. Xavier's remains were discovered on June 3rd in a barn off Highway 6 in the rural municipality of Grahamdale. Anderson raised Xavier until she was 9 months old.
It was a blessing. It was a gift. It was like, there was so much love. She was a happy little girl. She was always smiling. She was always laughing.
Anderson claims she had an agreement with her cousin, Xavier's biological mother, to raise a child from birth. She said the last time she saw Xavier in person was in March 2022, after the child was placed back into her biological mother's care through Child and Family Services. Anderson said she video chatted with Xavier until the biological mother suddenly stopped communicating.
I didn't really have an explanation. Like, she didn't tell me why she was stopping, or she didn't, like, there was just really no communication.
Xavier's family is originally from the Penambatang First Nation, located about 240 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg. A month after Xavier's remains were found in a barn, owner Natasha Kitcher painted the structure orange with the words "Every Child Matters" written on the roof. Anderson believes that Xavier would still be alive if she remained under her care.
She deserves to still be here, but she's not. Xavier was still with me. I'm pretty sure, like, she'd still be alive if she was still with me.
RCMP are asking the public for any photos taken of Xavier after March 2022, when she was last physically seen. Anyone with information may call the Manitoba RCMP tip line at 431-489-8112. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The Premier of Nunavut will face a leadership review this Wednesday after a call for his removal from a member of the Legislative Assembly. On Monday, Avalik MLA Solomon Malaki brought forward a motion to have Nunavut Premier PJ Akiaguk removed from his position over a lack of transparency within his government. Malaki told reporters non-cabinet MLAs have not been receiving answers to their many inquiries since the beginning of the assembly, despite Akiaguk promising more transparency during his election campaign. The premier has denied the claims of a lack of transparency and said he has always made himself available to answer any questions. The last time a Nunavut premier was removed was in 2018 with former premier Paul Quassa. We'll take you to the East Coast, where there is a new series educating others about the Mi'kmaq people. We're back in 3 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. A new series called Mi'kma'ki celebrates the stories of the Mi'kmaq people. It was developed to preserve and revitalize Mi'kmaq culture and history. Angel Moore reports.
This episode of Mi'kma'ki features knowledge holder Duma Young explaining in Mi'kmaq to host Jarvis Gugu about Ilmi Busam, traditional medicines. Working with elders over the years, Young has identified up to 1,000 plants.
And so it's a combination of how I learned was growing up, living on a trap line, listening to elders, and also using academic knowledge.
Jarvis Gugu is from the Waigogama First Nation. He was delighted to host Mi'kma'ki and share Mi'kmaq history.
And I was enthusiastic. I say, you know what, this is a great idea. It's an opportunity to share stories with, a different audience. I'm like, you know what, I'm on board.
Andrew Younger produced the show for his company, the Wellsung Group, a television and media production house. He was inspired to develop the series so people can understand what is going on in Mi'kmaq communities.
I've always had a real interest in Mi'kmaq history, and one of the things I'm seeing more and more in social media is people not understanding the history of the Mi'kmaq and why many of the issues that have come up politically exist.
Gugu traveled around the province, speaking to Mi'kmaq people about their rich culture and history and learning hands-on skills such as braiding sweetgrass.
So what I learned was you can actually transport sweetgrass from its original native location or its spot to making a flower bed elsewhere. Somebody who has a green thumb probably knew that was common sense. That was actually something that was new to me.
This episode may have focused on traditional medicines, but others will feature the meaning of regalia, art, and repatriation of Mi'kmaq artifacts. Gugu says the series will educate people about Mi'kmaq culture.
But somebody out there loves dancing. Somebody out there loves sewing. Somebody out there loves fishing. And through interviewing these people in the series, I got to learn a little bit of something of each of that. And I want our audiences to learn, not just Mi'kmaq, but even non-Mi'kmaq, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, whether it's here in Mi'kma'ki or elsewhere.
The 13 45-minute episodes air on community television, and they will eventually be posted on YouTube next year. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Japutuk, also known as Halifax.
The founder and CEO of the Indigenomics Institute, which is committed to the growth and development of Indigenous economies, is our guest on Face to Face tonight on APTN. Carol Ann Hilton says she's seeing more Indigenous women become successful business leaders. Here's a preview.
I think we're seeing an increasing number of Indigenous women on corporate boards. We're seeing Indigenous women increasingly undertaking master level business degrees and just participating in new ways and creating, I think there's a number that's identified that Indigenous women are creating businesses at 5 times the rate, and I think that represents seeing business as a tool that makes sense for ourselves, for our families and our communities.
We now want to tell you about this week's web poll question. With the US election today, we ask, do you feel the outcome of the United States election will affect your life in any way? Your answers are yes, no, or unsure. Have your say over on our website at www.aptnnews.ca. And buyer beware, a series of inaccurate Indigenous language books is popping up on places like Amazon. Our reporter Sarah Bettens finds out more when we come back. Stay with us. Starting on the east coast, Halifax, sunny and 9, Charlottetown, 7 and rain. 1 in Cartwright and sun, La Grande River, 5. Quebec City, 5, Saint Jovite, 11. 13 in Ottawa, Sarnia, 18. Sudbury, 16, Wawa, 9. God's Lake, 2, Puckatawagan, 0. 1 in Gimli and sun, Princess Harbour, partly cloudy and 5. Yorkton, -1, Swift Current, 2. -4 in Stony Rapids, Buffalo Narrows, -1. -2 in Fort McMurray, Peace River, 2 as well. Lethbridge, 6, Calgary, 8. 11 in Tofino, Campbell River, 10. -8 in Fort Nelson, Smithers, 0. Whitehorse, -1, Dawson, -2. Fort Simpson, 3, Wrigley, -8. -11 in Colville Lake, Palatuck, -11 as well. Baker Lake, -15, Whale Cove, -15. And Clyde River, -11 in Arctic Bay, -10. A series of suspicious-looking and inaccurate Indigenous language books have been appearing on Amazon Marketplace. These appearances are raising questions about whether the books are being written by generative AI. APTN Sarah Bettens investigates.
Thomas Bear claims to be a distinguished Plains Cree language expert from Canada and the author of several books. His bio celebrates his work in the community, sharing his expertise through workshops and seminars. But there's suspicion that Bear isn't who he claims to be, or if he even exists. A series of near-identical books on Amazon are generating outrage on social media. From Plains Cree to Ojibwe to Blackfoot, most look the same, only the author names are different. The author profiles go nowhere. The International Standard Book Numbers, or ISBNs, aren't real. One Facebook user said the Ojibwe book she bought was inaccurate, and some suspect the books were created using generative AI. To put Bear's Plains Cree book to the test, APTN reached out to language instructor Dr. Kevin Lewis from the Minisequin Lake Cree Nation. Within seconds, he knew something was off. Most words were either inaccurately translated or completely made up.
I don't recognize that. Amuya would be like saying no. Nigan is forward or in the front. Oh yeah, it's off. I know it's off.
Professor David Gerhard heads the University of Manitoba's Computer Science Department. He says AI-generated books are common, and while they may look legit, they're often unreliable.
These generative tools, especially when they are working in domains where they don't have a lot of information, can sometimes just make up an answer rather than say they don't know. And so it's not clear whether the information in here would be reliable.
APTN plugged the introduction of Bear's Plains Cree Adjectives book into 3 AI detectors. While their accuracy can't be guaranteed, all 3 suggested the text was 100% AI generated. Gerhard notes a few other telltale signs.
You can do a search for these authors and find that they're not real people. But the big tell is that the ISBN, the International Book Number, is just made up.
Whether or not the language books are AI generated, someone somewhere uploaded them to the Amazon Marketplace. And Lewis worries they could be dangerous.
There's a lot of people that are really want to learn their languages, the Indigenous languages. And then it's just a shame that somebody sort of capitalized on it in that way.
Gerhard says sellers face few, if any, consequences for uploading books like this.
I don't think there's any way that we can police this. I don't think there's any consequences we can bring on the people doing this. Instead, what we can do is educate the public and let them know that these things are out there and to be careful of the sources of the information that you get.
Not judging a book by its cover, Lewis believes these dubious texts underscore the need for more Indigenous language programs.
We need them all over the place because there's so many people that are living in the cities, in the towns, not only the First Nations or the settlements, Métis communities. We're everywhere now, right? And then if we can sort of get online and then start teaching these languages, then I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Tim Gilman, an Amazon spokesperson, said there are content guidelines for books sold on Amazon and that Amazon will remove non-compliant books and suspend publisher accounts for repeated abuse. Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing guidelines require authors to disclose AI-generated, but not AI-assisted content. After APTN reached out to Amazon, Bear's Plains Cree book series was removed. However, dozens of similar books are still for sale. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And that's your midday newscast for this Tuesday, November 5th. Dennis Ward is back for your evening newscast in a few hours. Make sure to join us then. From everyone from APTN National News, hi miigwech masicho. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next day.